She didn't scream, she didn't steal, she just signed forms in my name and smiled at Thanksgiving like she still deserved to carve the turkey. There are betrayals that erupt like storms, loud and unmistakable. Mine came in the form of silence, of frozen credit reports, and a mortgage denial I never saw coming. All while the woman who claimed to love me like a daughter passed the gravy and said, "You're doing so well for yourself." For a long time, I believed her. I thought she was protecting me, protecting us. I mistook interference for love. I mistook invasion for family. And by the time I understood what she had done, it was already too late. Or maybe it wasn't. Before we go deeper into how everything unraveled, make sure to subscribe for more real revenge stories. Leave a comment if you've ever trusted someone only to find out they were slowly rewriting your life without asking. I didn't grow up with much. My mother worked 2 jobs and still came home short on rent, apologizing with tired eyes and late dinners. We shared a 1-bedroom apartment behind a laundromat and told each other stories to make the place feel less temporary. I used to fall asleep to the sound of washing machines thudding through the walls and imagined one day I'd have silence, stability, a home where nothing dripped or flickered or smelled faintly of bleach. That longing never left me. I carried it through school, through temp jobs and double shifts, through debt collectors and hard-won promotions. By the time I was 30, I had pulled myself into something resembling peace. My credit was finally clean. I had savings. I had no illusions that someone else would rescue me. I learned to become the person I needed. And then I met Simon. He was warm, safe, the kind of man who laughed with his whole body and asked questions like he actually wanted the answers. We met in a winter coffee shop, both buried in our laptops, both pretending not to watch the snow. With him, I let myself soften. I started to believe that building something together didn't mean losing what I had fought for alone. I thought that was growth. When I met his mother, Eleanor, she greeted me with a cashmere hug and compliments that were just slightly off. She called me grounded, which felt like praise until I heard it said in contrast. She spoke about family legacy like it was something precious and fragile, something I had to be gentle with. I told myself it was generational, that maybe she was just trying to connect. After the wedding, things changed, but not all at once. It was subtle. She offered to help us organize our financial paperwork, saying she had done it for all her children. She suggested joint accounts just for clarity. She'd send spreadsheets with friendly notes on where we could save better, invest smarter. Sometimes she'd loop Simon in without telling me, and I'd find out after the fact. I thought it was just her way of caring. I wanted to be included, not combative. I didn't push back, not when she offered to help us with the mortgage process. Not when she asked for copies of my documents to make the pre-approval smoother. I thought she was trying to welcome me. I wanted that to be true. I let myself believe we were a team, that I had finally earned a seat at the table. I didn't realize she had already taken the keys. It started with a denial. I had found the house online late one night, a quiet corner unit near the park, with light that poured through the windows like it belonged there. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't grand, but it felt like mine. When I sent in the mortgage application, I didn't think twice. I had done the math, my credit was solid, my income steady. I was finally ready. Then the email came. Your application has been declined due to a credit freeze on your file. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, maybe a clerical error, maybe something from years ago lingering on the record. I called the agency expecting a short wait and a quick fix. But what I got was a timeline. A freeze initiated 6 months prior. A security questionnaire answered perfectly. A signature that looked almost like mine, but not quite. I hung up the phone and sat still for a long time. The kind of stillness where even your heartbeat feels too loud. Something was off. I checked with Simon, asked if he had ever requested a freeze on my behalf. He blinked, confused, then said his mother had mentioned something about protecting our credit from hackers. Just a precaution, she'd said. He hadn't thought much of it. I asked how she could have accessed the forms. He shrugged, said maybe she had used some of the tax paperwork she helped him organize last year, the ones that used to sit in his desk drawer, the same drawer I'd let her borrow keys for. That's when the air shifted. I saw it clearly then, as if the puzzle had been sitting solved the whole time. Eleanor hadn't frozen my credit to protect me. She had done it to immobilize me, to control what moves I could or couldn't make, to make sure that if a house was purchased, it would be under Simon's name, her son, her legacy, not mine. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to break something, but nothing felt worth the damage. Instead, I nodded, told Simon I needed some time to think. He said he understood, but he didn't follow me, didn't press. He just went back to scrolling through his phone like nothing seismic had shifted. I closed the bedroom door behind me and stared at the reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was me, but quieter, still, waiting. Not broken, just deciding. Grief has a sound, rage has one too, but the silence that follows betrayal is different. It doesn't echo, it settles. I didn't tell Simon I knew everything. I didn't tell Eleanor either. I needed the truth to breathe without interruption. I needed space where their voices couldn't reach. So I began to move in the one direction she never anticipated. I remembered a friend from years ago who had left a messy divorce with nothing but a name and a quiet kind of fury. She'd become a realtor. I found her on LinkedIn, Mara Densley. Sharp eyes, sharper memory. When I messaged her, she replied with one line, "What did they take?" We met at a small cafe the next morning. I brought everything. The freeze notice, the forged documents, the email trail. She scanned each page with the kind of still focus that tells you you're not crazy. That what happened wasn't an accident, that someone wanted you powerless and underestimated. Mara showed me how to undo the freeze safely, how to place a fraud alert that didn't set off alarms but gave me room to breathe. She had contacts in lending, a woman at a local bank who didn't ask useless questions, only what I needed. With their help, I rebuilt, quietly. I detached myself from the shared account Simon and I had opened under Eleanor's advice. I redirected my direct deposit into a new account. I opened a secured line under my name with strict notifications. Every move I made was small, calculated, deliberate. Simon noticed the emotional shift but not the logistics. He thought I was just overwhelmed. He offered to take over more of the house hunting. I told him I needed space. He said, okay. He always said okay. At night, I lay awake next to him, memorizing the rhythm of someone who had chosen comfort over curiosity. He never asked what was keeping me up. He never once said, I believe you. That was when I knew. I wasn't rebuilding just for revenge. I was preparing for exit. Not an escape, but a clean severing. No yelling, no scenes, just the quiet removal of roots from soil that never accepted me. Mara and I found the townhouse 2 weeks later. 2 stories, brick exterior, modest garden, no shared walls. I ran my hand along the edge of the windowsill and felt something I hadn't in months. Stillness, but this time it was mine. The closing date fell on a Thursday. The sky was clean, cloudless, the kind of day people pretend means something. I signed the papers with a pen I had brought from home. A small detail, but it mattered. Every part of this needed to be mine. The ink, the silence, the choice. I had used none of Simon's credit, none of Eleanor's advice. The mortgage was mine. The deed carried one name. The key they handed me felt heavier than I expected. I didn't smile. I just held it like something I had fought for in private. I waited 3 more days before telling anyone. Eleanor's 65th birthday dinner was already planned, a sit-down affair at a restaurant she'd reserved months in advance. The kind with cloth napkins and menus in cursive. The kind where you perform the part of a family, even if you've already burned the script. I wore black, not for drama, but for clarity. I had been quiet for too long. I didn't need to be palatable. Eleanor was in full performance mode that evening. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, complimented my earrings, and sat at the head of the table like a monarch expecting tribute. When the waiter poured the wine, she lifted her glass towards Simon and said, "I just love how grounded you two are. So sensible, so forward-thinking." She smiled at me like she'd given me a gift I forgot to unwrap. I listened, I nodded, I waited. Near the end of the meal, as dessert was being cleared, I reached into my bag and placed a small velvet box on the table in front of her. Not wrapped, no bow, just there. Her fingers hesitated before touching it. She opened the lid and blinked. A key. I didn't look at Simon. I didn't explain. "To our new home," I said. My voice was calm even. My hands were steady. She looked at Simon, then back at me. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She was searching for the angle, the catch, the proof that this wasn't what it was. "It's already closed," I added. "No joint ownership, no strings, just mine." I said it like a weather report, no emotion, just fact. She closed the box slowly, said nothing. Simon's brow furrowed, but he said nothing too. I reached for my coat as the check arrived. "Happy birthday, Eleanor. You've always believed in legacy." I paused by her chair, just long enough to let the silence settle. Now you'll know what it feels like when someone protects their own. The room didn't fall apart, it folded. Eleanor sat still, her hand on the velvet box like it might move if she let go. Simon looked between us, confused, slow to catch up. He finally asked, "Wait, what do you mean your name's the only one on it?" I turned to him, not angry, just done. "I mean, I bought the house on my own. In my name, with my income, without your credit, without hers. The mortgage is mine, the title is mine, you're not on it. You were never meant to be." He stared at me like I had just switched languages. His voice dropped, quieter now, like he thought low volume made questions more reasonable. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to be safe. And safe didn't include telling the people who made sure I couldn't move 6 months ago when I tried." He blinked, once, then again. "You think I had anything to do with that?" I didn't answer. Eleanor spoke for the first time since opening the box. Her tone was cool, controlled, the kind of calm that pretends to be polite. "You're making this into something it's not. I only did what I thought was best. You've always been so cautious. I thought protecting your credit would help you." "You thought immobilizing me would give you control," I said. "You froze my credit behind my back, signed in my name, and you never told me. You smiled in my face while you made sure I couldn't buy a stamp without you knowing." Simon looked at her. "You did that?" She straightened. "I told you it was just a precaution, to protect your future." He sat back like someone had just taken the floor out from under him. I could see the wheels turning, the doubt finally surfacing, but there was no courage behind it, no apology. Just confusion, disappointment, and fear. I stood. "You once told me, Eleanor, that whoever holds the paperwork holds the power, so I learned. I filed mine without you. I didn't freeze your access. I simply removed your relevance." I looked at Simon one last time. "You had a choice too. You chose comfort. You chose silence. I needed a partner, not a spectator." He didn't move. He didn't reach for me. That was his choice again. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cold night air. The key in my coat pocket pressed against my palm, heavy, real, mine. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Power, I realized, doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the form of ownership. Sometimes it signs only one name. The texts came first, then the emails, then the quiet messages passed through Simon's sister, through mutual friends, through people I hadn't heard from in years. Eleanor wanted to explain. She wanted to meet. She said I misunderstood her intentions. She said family was complicated. That's how she always phrased harm, complicated, asterisk. I didn't respond. I reported the identity theft through the proper channels, submitted the documentation, the forged signature, the mismatched handwriting, the timeline. It wasn't enough for charges. He had covered her tracks just well enough to keep things murky, but the record was there now, filed, permanent, a future flag on anything she ever tried to touch again. Simon called once. I didn't answer. He didn't try again. I had already forwarded the separation paperwork. Quiet, clean, no theatrics. We hadn't bought anything together. There was nothing to fight over. His silence had done all the work for me. I moved into the townhouse 3 weeks after the closing. Alone, I furnished it slowly. Secondhand pieces, soft lighting, no one's input but mine. For the first time, I felt like every object belonged to the life I had chosen, not the one I had been maneuvered into. The garden out back was overgrown when I moved in. I spent early mornings there, clearing out vines, untangling roots. It felt appropriate, like reclaiming something. Mara dropped by once to sign a final document and brought me a small housewarming gift, a potted olive tree. Quiet, strong, and slow to grow. She said it would take years to fully root. I told her that was the point. Eleanor eventually stopped trying. Maybe she finally understood that her grip had loosened beyond repair. Maybe she just found a new story to rewrite, one where she was the victim. One where I was the ungrateful outsider. It didn't matter. The truth was no longer hers to sculpt. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been. What lingered was something quieter. Sadness, maybe, but not regret. Every day, I opened the door with my own key. Every bill had my name on it. Every plan started from scratch, not from someone else's blueprint. Control wasn't the power I thought I wanted. It was self-trust. And that was something no one could steal again. There's a stillness that comes after surviving a life someone else tried to write for you. One morning, weeks after the last message had come and gone unanswered, I stood in the kitchen with the windows open. The air was cool, the kind that slips in gently like it's asking permission. The house was quiet, but not hollow. It held the kind of silence that doesn't demand anything. On the counter sat a frame I hadn't unpacked until then. It was small, worn around the edges, something I had taken from my mother's old apartment after she passed. Inside it was a note in her handwriting, something she'd scribbled on a torn grocery list and pinned to the fridge when I was 16. My name is the deed. I never understood what she meant until now. It wasn't about ownership in the legal sense, though she meant that too. It was about identity, about not waiting for someone else to validate your place at the table. That morning, I planted the olive tree Mara gave me in the back garden. The soil was cold, resistant at first, but it gave way. I placed it carefully, packed the earth around it, and watered it in silence. I didn't need witnesses. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed roots that started with me. Inside, I made tea and sat by the window, watching the wind move through the branches. The house smelled like lavender and loose pages. My phone was on silent. My name was the only one on the title, the insurance, the loan, the mailbox. That used to terrify me. Now it anchored me. Some stories don't end with confrontation. Some don't end with an apology. They end in peace that you choose, over and over, even when no one is looking. She tried to make sure I wouldn't have a future without her fingerprints on it. So I made one with clean hands. And when I locked the door that night, I did it knowing I wasn't shutting anyone out. I was finally home,